Okay, so you came to Berlin to NOAH,
Yeah.
NOAH conference, and I invited Aleph or Eden Shochat to tell us about the next big thing. He pretty much was right on everything he said. But maybe before we dig into the materials, maybe you can give a quick background about yourself and Aleph,
Sure.
what you are interested in, so everyone knows.
Yeah, originally an engineer before moving over to the dark side of venture capital. Built a few companies, last of which was Face.com that ended up being sold to Facebook. I now am one of the equal partners in a venture firm called Aleph. We manage close to $350 million and invest in almost anything other than medical and clean tech because we claim we're absolutely clueless about that. And anywhere from B2G like Windward, selling to governments, to B2C like House Party. So very wide gamut of...
What's the check size you invest?
So typically A, we say we don't do seed, except a third of the portfolio is seed. So you don't do it, but yeah, Lemonade, you need $13 million for insurance, so yeah, let's do that. Or Kolu, there's blockchain, and no one invests in blockchain, so we need to do seed, so we'll do the A. So typically it's 3 to, we just closed the deal at 12 million first check size.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations. So let's talk about the Israeli ecosystem.
Sure.
What's your perspective on it? Where does it stand?
You can look at this from 3 different angles, right? So there's the first, which is the company angle, which I think is pretty amazing. Like if you look 5 years back, a company like Lemonade would be selling tools to insurance providers, right? No Israeli would think 5 years ago to start an insurance company. And the companies are not in the echo chamber of Silicon Valley. So you create companies that are very different than the ones in Silicon Valley. I used Windward as an example. You do not have a company that does maritime monitoring of ships in the valley. So on the company side, it's pretty amazing because finally you actually go for the bigger companies, the bigger outcomes. So that's one. Funding, generally okay. We definitely have small number of funds compared to the number of startups we have. The biggest problem right now is seed. You do have seed funds, but it's a small number and mostly just angels. And you see weird terms like cap tables you need to fix, like participating preferred that you think shouldn't be there anymore, or other weird stuff. So funding, still ways to go. I think talent is interesting in the sense that it's the first time that it's now an open issue that people speak about. But there are initiatives like Beta by Eran Shir of bringing in talent from outside of Israel to Israel with the participation of the government, but also just funding their travel. So it's an immensely important initiative, and that's actually the area where we suffer both as venture as well as startups. So overall, the situation has never been better, but obviously there are things to fix.
So what types of companies do you think will succeed out of this ecosystem? What are you looking for as an investor?
So what we look for doesn't necessarily is what will be the most successful, right? We're clueless about medical, but I think, for example, Zebra Medical is one of the most exciting companies in Israel.
Stage here, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you'll get a treat. They're a great company, so there isn't a direct correlation necessarily, but the most successful, the most interesting companies from out of Israel are kind of the multidisciplinary kind of companies. So companies that do multiple things that are actually pretty hard to do each one by itself, but are extremely hard to do if done together. Like Common Sense Robotics, which has been stealth most of the time, is a good example where they build robots for supermarkets. So they actually shrink supermarkets to a fifth of their size and enable sub-1 hour delivery. So these guys build robots, build software, build new type of business models, market to Europe and the US. So it's a multidisciplinary effort that you don't see as much outside of Israel. And these are the most successful companies, I think, that will come out of Israel.
And what are the strongest segments in the ecosystem? We have lots of 325 international guests, corporates and investors. What are the segments they should focus on, you think?
If you look...
This is like the same question we had in Berlin.
Yes. Well, I ended the Berlin conversation saying, if you take just one word from this conversation. This is 9 months back?
You said 3 letters.
3 letters, yeah, ICOs, right? So this is like 9 months back, before the craze. So I think crypto is definitely an interesting thing that is happening in Israel. You have, again, multidisciplinary, so you have, as I'm sure you know, RSA, for example. The encryption standard, the worldwide encryption standard is 2 Israeli and a Jew, or I guess 3 Jews, and out of which 2 Israelis. So a lot of crypto-specific knowledge in Israel, and then building up, you actually see a lot of different types of blockchains that are being developed in Israel that are better than Ethereum or better than the Bitcoin blockchain. So that entire stack, and Simplex, which I think is on, is here. So that entire stack is really interesting that is going on in Israel. So that's one.
And you think this whole Bitcoin is here to stay? There's a lot of concerns from large investors. Usually they want to sit it out and wait rather than being the first mover.
So Bitcoin by itself, maybe it's blasphemy, right? Part of my, I'm on the board of the Israel Bitcoin Association. So maybe what I'm going to say now is blasphemy. Bitcoin has an inherent issue that the more you transact with it, meaning it has intrinsic value, then it is higher in value, which increases your likelihood to hoard, so you transact less. So it's actually, there's a bug in Bitcoin. So when I bought in early 2012, I just printed 2 QR codes, put them aside, and said it's either 0 or 10,000. So I revised it to either 0 to 30,000. But it's like, so Bitcoin, I don't think that you invest.
Originally the currency got created to make payments easier.
Yeah,
and it looks like
it's not even close.
It's now like an investment security. Everyone.
Yeah, you don't say security, right? That's worrisome with the SEC. It is definitely become a store of value, right? So it's definitely not transactional because, as people know, right now you can only do 7 transactions per second on the blockchain, and that's like 1 to the 100,000 of what they actually need. So, but you don't invest in Bitcoin. What you invest is in if you believe the crypto will work, if you believe decentralized, trustless environments will work, if you believe that you can run code on the blockchain, you can reinvent many, many things. Like Non-Portfolio, a company called Wave, they do bill of lading, right? So they replace a piece of paper that you fly around. So you ship something, and then you fly a piece of paper that says, I own this thing, because you want to get credit. It's like, this is idiotic. So by putting that on the blockchain, you can actually have a trustless environment. So that's huge. You mentioned, so industries, so that's definitely one industry. You see insurance being reinvented. I think hardware, definitely B2B hardware, but also some B2C, and I think you also have them on the stage soon. Again, multidisciplinary things, super interesting.
Okay, 2 more questions. I ask you here the same question. What's your #1 recommendation to an Israeli startup how to go global?
Well, there's first the big question of where do you put your headquarters, right? And it used to be absolutely clear that you put your headquarters in the US, and I think that's no longer the case, right? Checkpoint was always cited as this is Israel-based, but I think today, even Lemonade that I mentioned, Lemonade is the #1 new insurance provider in New York, which is unbelievable. Their target was 15,000 policies. They sold 100,000 policies last year, so immensely, immensely huge, and they're based out of Israel. So first, like going global doesn't necessarily mean that you have your headquarters outside. What you do and what you should and what Israelis are uncomfortable doing is understanding that your management needs to be local. Like Israelis do really well with other Israelis. So, but if you're in Paris, you should actually have a Paris-based manager that came to Israel, worked with you, and you trust them and will build those additional sites. So I think the biggest lesson there is for Israelis to actually trust non-Israelis and build, we believe, from Israel, but it doesn't necessarily so. Like WeWork, another portfolio company, is New York-based, but they have a huge office in Israel. 100
they started
people.
here, right? So.
No, unfortunately they started in New York, so I can't even say.
Business,
yes, they started a different business, and then hopefully we live in Tel Aviv soon.
Okay.
Like the residential solution.
So you have 20 years plus in the industry.
That's sad.
Well, depends on how you look at it. You have lots of experience. Share with our international guests what they shall do to get closer to the ecosystem here, to build relationships. I know a lot of US companies, Microsoft, Priceline, they come frequently with the top guys and they organize little dinners and little meetings. Is that something the Europeans should also do more, or what is the recommendation you can give?
That's basically useless.
Useless.
Like having dinners, like yeah, free food is always good. I'd be the last to say no to free food, but I think yeah, you don't just take an Israeli and tell him bring me some innovation, or even worse, just fly over someone and say, well, give me some of your good stuff. It is actually a long-term investment. And it starts with understanding the same as the last question, which is you need to have people on the ground that actually understand the culture and can interface with people for the long term and can build long-term relationships. So the key thing would be to probably hire someone, an Israeli, an expat, or from here, bring them over, bring them to HQ, get them to know the people there, because the hardest thing to do is to navigate an organization, right? So I now found an awesome Israeli technology, but I have no idea which business line owner I should actually introduce them to and how to. So if you bring someone over, teach them the enterprise, teach them the corporate, let them build some clout within, and then send them over here and actually devote something to being on the ground.
So 2 feet on the ground.
2 feet on the ground, I
This
think,
is from
otherwise...
one of the #1 digital investors. No,
Yeah,
I like it. This is how it should be.
There's no other way. I mean, there's no... Like, there are weird models that you can, like some as a corporate funder, fund local funds, and forget that funds are actually, the job is to make you money versus to make you informed, right? So making you money, that's fine. That's an easy target. But making you informed, that's a harder target. So.
Well, you informed us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate and all the help you gave us to start this conference.
Thank you for being a friend.
Thank you.